may be seated. The case is using iPods and iPads in teaching programs for individuals with developmental disabilities, a systematic review by Kagahara and colleagues published in 2013.
Thank you. Clerk, could you please summarize the details of the case?
Certainly, Your Honor. The article in discussion today is a systematic review of articles that involve using iPods and iPads to teach programs for individuals with developmental disabilities. The review aimed to inform evidence-based practice on the use of iPod and iPad-based instruction for individuals with developmental disabilities. The secondary aim was to identify gaps in the literature. Outcomes were reported for 15 studies, which included a total of 47 participants who ranged from ages 4 to 27 with a diagnosed developmental disability. The 5 domains identified were teaching academic skills, communication skills, developing employment skills, leisure skills, and transitioning. The authors stated that the results were positive, suggesting that the use of these devices could be incorporated into educational and rehabilitation programs for individuals with developmental disabilities.
Thank you, Clerk. Let us review the rigor and quality of this article and see if it holds up in this courtroom. To do this, the Prisma checklist, an evidence-based tool, will be used to guide the critical appraisal of this systematic review. The defense and prosecution will state their case, one main point at a time. The defense may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I intend to prove the systematic review in question has many strengths. I would like to begin by informing the jury of the use of iPads and iPods and related devices examined in this review are valuable for teaching programs for those with developmental disabilities. As this technology develops, it is important for the jury of occupational therapists to consider its clinical applications. The defense would also like to emphasize the value of the research paper in identifying critical gaps in literature and suggesting areas for future research. At the time of this systematic review, the literature on using iPads and iPods for teaching individuals with developmental disabilities was sparse, which detracted from the strength of this review. However, this paper laid an important foundation for research to come, acknowledging its deficits, and made important suggestions for future research, including looking at interventions for individuals with profound or multiple disabilities and looking at interventions for social skills, an area that is pertinent for clinicians. The value of these recommendations to the field should not be overlooked.
Thank you, defense counsel, for your first strength of the article. Prosecutor, you may now provide the jury with your arguments.
Despite the limited research available in this area, the authors of this article failed to exercise due diligence in assessing the quality of the studies they included in their review. The purpose of a systematic review is to not only summarize the evidence currently available, but to assess the quality of such evidence. According to the law of Portnoy and Watkins, Section 16, systematic reviews should utilize rating scales to assess and succinctly report the quality of the evidence that is being reviewed. I see this as a negligent act in direct violation of our research code. Your Honor, I would also like to present Article 19 under Emma Irvin's law. The prosecution finds the defense guilty of conflict of interest and biased reporting. 10 out of the 15 studies included in this review were written by the same authors. In the case that the authors wish to include their own studies in a review, they are mandated to disclose their involvement. They should employ independent reviewers to extract this data and check the interpretation against the study report and any available study protocols to limit the bias introduced in the review. Further, published articles are more likely to report significant effects of treatment, be published in English, be cited by other authors, and are more likely to appear in subsequent reviews. Therefore, these articles were subject to these biases, which were not disclosed by the authors. Lastly, Your Honor, the sample sizes of these articles were extraordinarily small, ranging from 1 to 6 participants. As you can see, all the articles in this review were proliferated with biases, and therefore inadmissible in evidence-based practice.
Thank you, prosecutor, for your insight. The defense may now state their next point.
The defense would like to highlight a major strength addressed by authors. It is well documented that there is a significant amount of stigma surrounding individuals with developmental disabilities and the assistive aids these individuals often require. The technology devices utilized in the interventions summarized in this study seem to be socially accepted and thus perhaps less stigmatizing than low-tech or other specialized assistive devices. Therefore, individuals using iPods and iPads as assistive aids are less likely to be stigmatized for using assistive devices. Additional benefits of these devices are that they are readily available and reasonably affordable. and most importantly, individuals enjoy using them. The benefits of these devices in teaching programs for individuals with developmental disabilities cannot be overstated. The defense rests its case.
Prosecutor, do you have anything to add?
Yes. Another important aspect of any systematic review is to provide sufficient information so that other researchers could replicate the review and reach similar results. This ability is what makes a systematic review systematic rather than simply narrative. Much of the necessary information for replication is entirely absent in the study under consideration here. The prosecution acknowledges that parts of a protocol were stated. However, it was not registered, which limits it significantly. Additionally, there was no search strategy explicitly stated, nor specific exclusion criteria of studies, nor specific description of data extraction. Each of these indiscretions, again, go against the law of Courtney and Watkins, Section 16. Their initial search yielded 55 results, and yet only 15 of these studies were included. No discussion of why, no flow diagram, no explanation whatsoever past being screened against inclusion criteria. The review at hand lacks transparency, adherence to basic rules guiding systematic review publication, and would be incredibly difficult to repeat. Thus, the prosecution stresses again this study violates our research code.
Jury, please take into consideration all the information presented to you today as you deliberate. You may now leave the courtroom.
Based on my knowledge of the American Academy of Neurology, according to their classification of evidence, this systematic review would be considered a level 3 out of 4. I feel the defense has laid out some good points, but as a jury of occupational therapists, we must strive towards the highest quality of evidence when informing our practice.
Yes, I agree. While the article presents relevant interventions to today's technologically based society, such interventions still require the consideration of resources in purchasing iPads, attaining adequate training, and keeping pace with the constant development of new technology.
Yes, but these findings can help to encourage the allocation of resources to this area of practice.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, while this review provided seemingly promising results, they should be interpreted with caution. The prosecutor brought up many strong points speaking to the quality of each study. Some studies only had one participant. Do you think that's enough to demonstrate that it's safe and effective to use on our clients?
We need more evidence and a more rigorous systematic review to determine the effectiveness of iPad and iPod use in educational context before it can be used in practice. That's the whole purpose of systematic reviews, to inform clinical decision-making and support evidence-based practice. I just don't think this provides me with enough evidence to confidently implement it in my practice.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. This review does not present much value to occupational therapy based on its lack of rigor, poor generalizability, and biased results. However, I feel as though it would be valuable to have conversations with colleagues regarding this topic, as it may help raise awareness regarding the challenges that individuals with developmental disabilities face, specifically in educational contexts.
I agree. I look forward to see what further research will be brought forward as a result of this study.
Based on all the things that we've discussed, my suggestion to OTs would be to conduct their own research and then use their own clinical experience to make a decision. I would also recommend that all OTs speak to their clients. They should be individually learning about what the client's preferences are as well. Doing both of these things would be valuable until further research is done or another systematic review is done. That's perhaps better.
So are we all in agreement?
Will the foreperson please stand? Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes, Your Honor. We find the defendant not guilty of Prisma checklist items 1, 3, 4, 18, and 25 to 27. We find the defendant guilty of items 2, 5 to 17, and 19 to 24. Our final verdict for Kogahara is guilty.
Thank you, jury members, for your deliberation. In the name of this courtroom, I find the study guilty.